Now that you've made the decision to start dual enrollment, you'll have to take 2 English classes, 111 and 112.
We have put together 5 aspects of the courses, and we will conclude with tips on how to help you succeed in the classes. So there will be 2 synthesis papers due over 2 semesters of English 111 and 112. In the first semester, we have to focus on an adult learning problem. We'll identify that and describe what it is as well as ways to combat it. And it's a 16-week course. The first 10 to 11 weeks, you prepare for writing the paper, and then roughly the last 5 to 6 weeks, you actually write it. After about 3 weeks of writing it, you submit it to MMCC for your first time, and practically everyone fails. But that's a learning experience, so that you know that there's always room for improvement. And the second submission, either pass or fail, and I'll leave Tyler to talk about that.
At the end of the 15th week, you must submit your paper for the last time into 111. And if you don't get an approval, you have to take a 111B course. The 111B course works with you on your synthesis paper until it is deemed acceptable. Until you pass 111B, you may not move on to 112. And I was the only person to not get an approval in 111, so I was the only person who had to take 111B. What happened was I came in over Christmas break with 5 or 6 other students from the other dual classes, and we worked with Sally Butler on just like what we needed to work on from our synthesis papers. And then we were given our own time, and we just had to keep on submitting it to Sally until it was deemed acceptable. It took me about 3 more submissions until my paper was accepted. But in the end, after a long, tedious process, I put a lot of time into it, and I learned it's way easier to put too much information in the first time than it is to just not put in as much information as possible. Just don't be that guy who doesn't put in enough work.
In the second semester, we had to connect themes from 3 different stories we read throughout this semester. We spent much of our semester reading stories and then analyzing them. We then had to choose from 3 different stories out of like probably 5 or 6, and then connect them through our theme. English 112, that synthesis is taken much more lightly than 111's. However, there is still a lot of stress put into it. Mrs. Curry, our teacher, she grades this round of synthesis, and then about 3 or 4 people are randomly selected to submit their papers to MMCC. Then she takes their comments and uses them to influence your grade.
Since this is an English class, it's kind of implied that there would be some reading and poetry involved. In English 111, you have to read articles and short stories by authors like Jack Mesereau and Anne Lamott, which are more informative and relatable kind of pieces. But in English 112, you read more short stories by authors like Edgar Allan Poe and Shirley Jackson. In English 112 also, you'll have to pick a poem from the book that you get. You have to write an essay and give a presentation on that poem, which you select from the book. You don't have to spend too much time on the poetry, which is a good thing for all you poetry haters out there.
In both 111 and 112, you'll have to do discussion forums. Discussion forums are when you take a piece or 2 of the readings that you previously have read, and you'll have to analyze them in your own way without summarizing them. A key part is not summarizing. There's normally a couple of choices on topics you get to choose from, and then you'll choose 1, and in some cases 2, of what the topics are that you're going to write on. They're a small amount of points compared to other papers, but they're important to try hard on because you'll need to use those skills on synthesis.
Throughout the courses of English 111 and 112, there are times when you're asked to dig deeper, like by your teacher. There's always room to dig deeper. Digging deeper is basically going into detail about certain spots that you're just basically just hitting the surface on. There's more room to dig deeper in your synthesis paper or any other paper, especially if it has to do with like personal life experiences, like our first synthesis in 111, because it had to do with focusing on adult learning problems that affected yourself. So you can basically just tell like a lot of stories and go into details about that. And you want to make sure that you stay focused on the main topic.
In these 2 classes, work in class is a very big part of your grade. There's small class sizes so you can ask questions with your teacher easily. Participation is required in class discussions so you can all get a turn speaking. There's lots of group work in partners or groups of 3 or 4. Peer reviews are also used in this class to help you get better on your synthesis with having your classmates' input. There's many discussion forums, as we just talked about. And there's some days where you get to play games or watch movies, but you should take those days seriously because they can help you understand the material better or learn something new.
Alright, now that we have discussed in-class work, it's time to talk about out-of-class work. In English 111 and 112, there's not an overwhelming amount of homework when it comes to synthesis time. There's more, but it's still like not enough to keep you like up at night, you know? Yeah, just make sure everything is up to date. There's not ever really, like I said, a ton of homework, but just make sure you're up to date because if you fall behind, everything will just pile up. And from personal experience, you don't want that to happen.
How to succeed. There's different ways to succeed in English 111 and English 112. Some of the ways are reading the books and stories required for the activities in the class, spending a lot of time working on the synthesis paper so that you have a better chance of having it correct the first time it goes through, going above and beyond any expectations that your teacher has on you, not procrastinating, definitely not procrastinating, because if you do, then you'll fall behind and you won't have enough time to finish any of your papers or activities. Not slacking during group projects that could affect multiple grades. The group projects you're involved in, whatever grade you get in it, like your group gets in it, every single member gets in it. So you don't want to like fail it just because you don't want to do something, so that the rest of your group mates fail the activity. Being serious when it is required, so basically 9 times out of 10 you get to be serious. So there are times where you can just start joking around and relieve some stress. And really, not stressing about the small things. Like, if you misspell a couple of things in your papers, don't stress about it. Just go ahead and change it and finish it so that it's nearly perfect. And last but not least, have fun. Like, during the days we have like games and watch movies in our class, don't like stress about anything. Start like having fun and forget about any stressful things you have.
Now that you have made the decision to start dual enrollment at Huron, God damn it.
Go.
Now that you have made the decision to start dual enrollment, you will have to take 2 English classes, 111 and 112. We need to do that one again.
No, I won't. Just restart. Okay. There will be 2 synthesis papers due over 2 semesters of like English 111 and 112. The first semester, you have to focus on adult learning problem. It's a 16-week course. Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
In the second semester, we had to connect 3 different ideas from 3 different stories throughout this semester. We spent, dang it.